Oh, hi, everybody. Look at all of you. Looks like my camera is a little wonky, but we're not going to worry too much about it. I think it'll fix itself, hopefully, and we won't have this problem once I start showing you slides. There we go. That's all better. Look at all of you early birds jumping in early. Good for you guys. Tell me where you're coming from. Oh, Hilda from Hungary. Wow. From Georgia. Okay, Jan, you're sort of a neighbor. I'm in Tennessee. So at least we're in the same time zone. So jump in and tell me where you're from. Hi, Diane from Sydney. Awesome. And Australia. You guys from Australia, you really impress me. But it's Monday morning there, right? Am I right? Or Monday afternoon? Tell me what time it is in Australia.
6 a.m.
6 a.m. Wow, you guys are awesome. I love it. And Katarina from Slovakia. Katarina, did we speak? Yes, I think we did, didn't we? Yeah, it's 8 o'clock. Okay. Okay, and from Slovenia. And yes, you guys are awesome. I love it. Okay, we'll just hang out a little bit while everybody is jumping in so we can get started at the top of the hour, because I have a lot of stuff to share with you, and I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to get to everything, and give you time to ask questions at the end. So while we're waiting, just one thing about the chat. I'm going to mute everybody's microphones once we get started, but if anybody has anything they want to ask, you can jump in and either unmute yourself and ask, or put it in the chat. But here's what I suggest you do about the chat. You can open it up, and then it opens like right in front of you on your screen, and it'll block you seeing everything. So just click on it and drag it over to the side. And then you can still keep track of the chat and not have it interfere with, the screen that you want to look at. Yeah. Oh, Katarina. Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. Good. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're back again. And if you guys have any questions as we're going through the presentation, don't hesitate to just put them in the chat. I may not see them right away because for part of this, I want to do a full screen so that you can really see all the slides really well. So when I do that, I can't see the chat, but I will check on it from time to time and answer your questions. So put your questions in there. At the end, you can either ask a question by putting it in the chat, or you can just unmute your microphone and we'll talk. So either way is fine. Okay, yes, hi, let's see, Renate, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. From Denmark. I love it. All of you folks from Europe. I'm so glad. I'm so impressed, because I think that this information about dogs' emotional needs and why they get reactive and so forth, I think it's a very widespread problem that a lot of people run into with their dogs. And I think we have to have a serious conversation about why, where is that coming from? Why is that happening? And it's not just a few dogs here and there. It just seems to be really widespread. And the more I talk to people who are dealing with this kind of thing with their dogs, the more I find out that there's just so many of us out there that are facing it. So, all right, so awesome. We are almost at the top of the hour. So I am going to get ready to share my screen and we'll start the slide presentation. I want to give everybody a chance to get logged on and get settled and get started. But on the other hand, I don't want to put off because I know that when I log in and I'm watching a webinar, I expect it to start when they say it's going to start. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So it's top of the hour. So we'll get going. Let's see. First thing I'm going to do right here is, let's go right here. Okay. So I clicked everybody's microphone should be muted, just in case, if things happen in the background, sometimes you don't plan it and it can be, it can be disruptive. So we'll just mute. You can easily unmute yourself later on. That's not a problem. I'm not, cutting you off forever. So, okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start the slide presentations. Before I get started, is there anything that you need to ask me before we get started? Anything really urgent? If it's just a question about the content, we'll deal with that as we go along. And if not, I'm going to go ahead and let's see. And just bear with me here for 1 second. Okay. And sometimes it takes a while to get all this stuff organized. Okay. Nope, that's the wrong screen. I don't want that screen. Oop, oop. I'm going to get rid of that. Nope. Nope. Make it go away. And start this again. Sorry, guys. Start this one more time. Okay, I think I got it right now. Sorry for that screw up. Okay, here we go. Now, I am going to make this a full screen and make sure everybody is all set and you can see me. And I'm going to minimize the chat so it's not in the way and minimize you guys. All right. Okay. I think we're ready finally to get started. Hopefully you can all see my screen. If any of you cannot see my screen, unmute yourself and tell me. Otherwise, I'll assume that everybody's good. Okay. The content we're going to cover here is about reactive dogs, and our goal, our objective, our desired outcome is that we want a calm companion, not only for our own sakes, but for our dog's sake as well, because we don't like to feel stressed, and certainly your dog doesn't like it either. So we are going to talk about how to help our overexcited, emotionally distressed dogs feel safe, relaxed, and happy without forced correction or obedience. I have more to say about that as we go along. So let's go to the next slide. So here's what you can expect to learn today. We're going to talk about the source of reactive, over-the-top, out-of-control behaviors. I hear people telling me, I just feel like my dog is out of control. I don't know what to do. I tell him to pay attention, to stop, to listen to me, to sit, to come, whatever. And it's like he doesn't even hear me. And you know what? You're right. He doesn't. And we'll talk about, about why that is. And we'll also talk about why more obedience training and desensitizing is likely to make things even worse. And that may come as a surprise because we often think that if the dog is afraid of something, that desensitization and counter conditioning is the way to go. And that certainly is a very legitimate procedure for training dogs. However, there is an exception to when that will work, and we're going to get to that. And finally, we're going to talk about the obvious steps you can take right away. So when you leave this this masterclass today, I want you to take away something that you can do with your dog right now today that will help. It won't be the complete solution because it's not that easy, and there is no magic shortcut. But I want to give you something that will help. All right. And why does this work? The reason this works is that when we work on this system that I'm going to share with you today, we go to the source of the problem, not just the symptom. And we work with the dog that's in front of us right now in the present moment, not the dog we wish we had. We wish we had before, or not the dog we hope that we're going to have next week or next month or next year, but the dog that is right there, right in front of us right now, because that's the only dog we can teach. That's the only dog we can train, is the one that's right there in front of us now. And finally, the reason this works is that we meet the dog's fundamental needs before asking for tasks. And tasks are things that the dog can learn to do, but learning requires a thinking and problem-solving brain. A distressed and upset dog has his thinking and problem-solving brain put on hold. So barking it's the most common thing people ask about, because it usually accompanies a lot of different versions of dogs being distressed. So what does a barking dog really want? Why is he barking? So dogs use their voices all the time. They use them for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons I picked this particular picture, which kind of makes me laugh a little bit, is that it reminds me of my own dogs doing what they do at least once a day, and that is they have a group howl. And they all chime in and they all start howling like a pack of wolves. And it goes on for maybe a minute, and then they all stop at the same time. Why are they doing it? I give up. I don't know. But they are expressing themselves. So it kind of makes me smile. This picture reminded me of that. However, when my dogs howl like that, I don't get the feeling that they're upset about anything. They're just doing something together. It's a community activity that they participate in. They're not upset. They're not distressed. But dogs do use their voices to convey that kind of distress and anxiety and fear and alarm. And you know your own dogs, and you know the difference between a bark that's just a happy bark and a bark that is frightened or afraid, or an alarm bark. We can tell the difference. But nevertheless, what we often do, because barking is sometimes disruptive to us, sometimes it's embarrassing if we're in public or if we have guests arriving at our home. What we often do is we add pressure to a dog that's already stressed by asking them to suppress that natural expression. It's like telling someone who is trying to tell you that they're in pain or that they're scared to just be quiet and stop talking. That's the kind of thing. All right. And we wouldn't do that. Most of us would not do that. Okay. What you cannot expect today is some kind of cookie cutter lesson to teach commands. We're not going to do that today. You can get that anywhere. You can even get it. You can get it for free. You can pay for it. You can get that in a lot of different places. So that's not what we're going to do today. We are not going to talk about any kind of fancy equipment that promises to make your dog stop doing a thing. And I'll have a little more to say about that later on. But you probably know what I'm talking about, is anything that inflicts a startle response or pain or discomfort or anything on the dog to frighten them into stopping whatever they're doing. And then finally, you're not going to get any magic shortcuts to an obedient dog, because as far as I know, they don't exist. And I've been doing this for a long time. And hopefully I would have discovered them if there was such a thing. But there are no magic shortcuts. You have to do the work, put in the effort. And I'm not going to say put in the time, because the time that it takes is much, much less than most of us would assume. So before I go on to the next slide, I want you guys to have a look at this picture. I put it up there for a reason, and I'm going to not stop the share, but I'm going to stop the full screen for a second so that I can have a look at the chat. And I want you to put in the chat what you see that's wrong with this picture. There's a bunch of things wrong with this. Tell me what you see as wrong. Anybody? Okay. Okay. Oh, we have Beverly. Okay, I hope Beverly was able to get the audio. Okay. Okay. Beverly, if you can hear me, tell me that you can hear that you got audio. I don't want you not to be able to hear. Okay, yeah, you guys are putting in a lot of good stuff. So there's tension, the dog's pulling away. There's no treat pouch, a retractable leash. Amy, you nailed it. Yeah, Kristen, flexi leash, Gret, you got it. Yeah, walking out in front of the owner. Well, that could or couldn't be. It just depends on what the goal of the walk is. But the flexi, yeah, you guys are getting it. You're getting it. Using an extension leash, allowing the dog to pull, right. The dog is stressed and he's not responding. Good. Okay, you guys are awesome. The person doesn't seem to be paying attention to the dog, who's obviously distressed or reacting to something. The dog is upset. Retractable leash. The dog is in front of the walker, pulling on the leash and looks like barking at someone. Yep. Distressed dog, dog stressed, dog stressed. Yeah. Okay. Yep. You guys got it. Awesome. Now, the flexi, you nailed it. The flexi, the dog is pulling. Retractable leashes are built to teach dogs how to pull on the leash. If you want a dog that will walk calmly with you on a leash, you're going to get rid of your flexi, because that's teaching your dog to pull. Also, the other reason, I think the biggest reason that I absolutely 100% object to this kind of a leash is that you have zero control over the dog. You have zero ability to communicate with the dog that's on the other end of that leash. Because you're holding that plastic thing, you're pushing a button, your timing is never going to be as fast as the dog's. And once the dog is out 10, 15 feet in front of you, all you can do is push the button and not let it extend anymore. And then what? You still have a dog that's way out there in front of you. You have no ability to communicate with the dog whatsoever. So if you have a dog that gets distressed on a leash walk, the retractable leash is not only is it not going to help, it's going to make things worse. It's going to be very confusing to the dog, because the dog has constant tension on whatever, a collar, harness, whatever it's attached to. Gret, I'm not sure about that. I hadn't heard that before, that retractables were designed for rescue work. Maybe a version of them. I know that there is a system where dogs are on some kind of a pulley that's a little bit like the kind of pulley you have when you're mountain climbing. I'm not that familiar with exactly how it's used, but I know that is one system. But you do have more control over the dog. Depends on how you use the flexi. Yeah, Katerina, all due respect, I have to say that if you're going to keep it locked, you might as well just have a regular leash that gives you control. Yes, the handle, yes, that happened to somebody I know, that the handle flew out of her hand and it went zipping at the dog, terrified the dog so that he ran away. And the dog was actually lost for a couple of days because the dog was so terrified it ran and hid and they couldn't find him. So yeah, there are a lot of problems with a flexi leash. They're just not desirable. That they, any advantage that you might come up with, we could probably list 10 disadvantages to balance that out. So yeah, I would say don't use your flexi. Guys, you were awesome at assessing this picture. I love it. Let me go back to the full screen so we can continue with this. All right. Okay, let me get rid of the chat for a sec. All right, this is, if you don't know me, I know a lot of you do, but in case that there's anybody here who's new and hasn't met me before, I'm Marilyn. My mission is to empower dog lovers to meet the emotional needs of their dogs first, so they can advocate for their dogs as benevolent leaders and empower them to learn and deserve their trust. So that's where we're going with this. That's where we're at. And I want to tell you a little story that will hopefully help put all of this in context. I want to introduce you to this little dog. His name is Junior. He's too cute for words, isn't he? He's a tiny little thing. Junior was my dog. He passed away a few years ago. He had a great life. I wish he had lived a few more years, but sometimes we don't have control over those things. But Junior was a Papillon, and he was a tiny little guy. And from the very first time he saw an agility obstacle, he was in love. He loved every obstacle. He didn't care whether he had to run through it, climb over it, jump over it. He loved it. And then one day, this is a story of trauma, but don't worry, it's not going to be upsetting. I wouldn't do that to you. One day we were at an agility practice, and some irresponsible owner had taken their great big dog off leash, which was against the rules for that particular activity. Took the dog off the leash, and this great big furry dog saw my little dog running around doing his agility course and took off and started to chase him. And this little 4.5-pound dog outran that great big huge dog. I don't know how he did it to this day, but he outran him. We finally got a hold of both those dogs. But thinking back on that experience, I think if only I had known then what I know now about trauma in dogs. He did recover, to the best of my knowledge, but it was about 1.5 to 2 years before I could take him back to an agility trial. So I gave him a complete rest. We did fun things at home. We did relaxation stuff, and we took our time, and I didn't force him to do anything. If I brought him into a trial atmosphere just to see how he'd feel about it, if he wasn't completely relaxed, then that was it. We didn't go back. We just worked on more chances to relax until finally we got there, and he did get agility titles and he got rally titles, and he had a great time competing. But that I wanted to share that with you because that's an example of a traumatic experience that we have to acknowledge with our dogs. We can't just dismiss it and say, okay, he looks fine. And after that happened, when I finally got a hold of them, and my heart rate was, and my respiration rate was sort of back to normal, people were saying, oh, he looks okay, he looks fine, he's not hurt. Well, there was no blood, so he didn't get attacked, but he had to be emotionally very scared. So it's the emotional stress of that kind of an experience that we have to be ready to acknowledge. So let's go on to the next thing. So I did stop training him for a good long while. We just did fun things at home. But what I want to talk to you today, and the reason I told you that little story is that I want to talk to you why training a dog before you take care of the dog's emotional needs is not productive, not useful, not helpful, and could actually make things worse. So here are 3 reasons I want to talk to you about. And we're going to go into each one of these in detail. If I can just make this thing go away. Okay. What do you want your dog to do? I mean, that's the bottom line question, isn't it? People usually think in terms of what they want the dog to stop doing. So we're going to go down to number 1, which is the make it stop myth. And that is, my dog is barking, how can I make him stop? My dog is lunging on the leash and pulling, how can I make it stop? And when your dog has big feelings that conflict with your expectations, is it fair to say that your dog needs more training? And my answer to that is no, it's not fair, because before you go to the training step, you need to make sure that you've assessed your dog's emotional needs. So 3 reasons training can make things worse. Number 1, the basic need to feel safe, at peace, and loved must be met before learning can take place. A dog that doesn't feel safe doesn't have the mental ability to process information and to learn new things. So just making the behavior stop is putting more pressure on the dog. It's not going to what the dog's basic need is. What is he saying with this overreactive behavior? What is he trying to tell us that he needs? And then number 2, emotional well-being brings trust, stability, and calm. So if your dog does not have that experience of feeling emotionally calm, at peace, and at rest, he doesn't trust the world around him. And we see dogs that detect threats every place they look. They look out the window and see someone walking down the street, and it's bark, 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 bark. Oh my goodness, the dog is, the dog is excited. So we try to make the dog stop. We look for compliance. Make my dog go sit down on the mat. Make him lie down. Make him look at me instead of looking at the thing that he sees as scary. Compliance instead of consent. We're going to talk more about consent later, because it's a huge piece of what you need to do in order to bring your dog to a state of emotional well-being. And number 3, learning is stressful. You know that. Remember the last time you were studying for a big test? Yeah, it's stressful, sure. And if you were in the midst of trying to learn material for an important exam, and somebody asked you to figure out something else that was completely unrelated to what you were focused on, it would be really hard. It would add pressure, and it would make you feel distressed and even more stressed. So what we need to do is learn how to translate the dog's body language. We'll call it dog speak. Dogs don't communicate with, the same language we use. They don't obviously use words, but they have a very, very advanced way of communicating, not only with us, but with each other. So one of our primary objectives, if we're going to address their emotional well-being, is we have to learn to understand what they're saying. What's the message? So let's talk a little bit more in detail about number 1, meeting emotional needs. Let's look at what we have below the picture here. If the burden of managing your dog's emotional over-arousal impacts your lifestyle, if I use the word burden because The feeling that I get when I'm talking to people who are experiencing this kind of thing, this reactivity, as they describe it to me, I get the feeling that it feels heavy, that they really do feel like it's such a burden and they want relief from the burden. They feel like they're missing out on something, and it's true. That if you feel that burden, then you're missing out on much of the joy of having a dog's companionship, where the dog is relaxed and happy and confident, and you can trust the dog's responses. So the basic needs, so for emotional needs, the basic need to feel safe, at peace, and loved must be met before learning can take place. Doesn't hurt to reiterate that. Denying a dog the freedom to naturally express felt emotions by using management, redirection, or avoidance will not produce a long-term resolution. So aren't those often the things that are recommended? If your dog is barking, let's manage it, let's redirect, let's make the dog pay attention to something else. Let's make the dog avoid that. Sit, look at me. Don't look over there at that thing you're barking at. But that doesn't solve that emotional anxiety, does it? So if you try to bury feelings, they don't stay buried. They grow and they actually sprout. So I want to talk to you about upstream planning, because this is a favorite topic of mine. And there's this boat sitting there. It's not going anywhere. It looks like it's up on the shore. But if you look closely at it, it's kind of missing an oar. You know, it doesn't look like it's really tethered to anything. You can't really see that well from this picture. You know, maybe it is tethered, but maybe it's not. But anyway, it's not out on the water. So before you were going to take that boat out on the water, it would be smart to arrange the environment in such a way that you had everything you needed. So you better go get your second oar. And so if you do that, you're going to solve problems before they happen. You have to know where you're going, make sure there's no leaks in the boat, make sure that you know the landmarks, so you know you can get from point A to point B without any trouble, and you know what to expect. So when you're doing upstream planning for your dog, that means you don't wait until you're out in the middle of the lake without a paddle, without an oar, because then it's too late. You should have thought of that before you got started. So if you don't plan and you just use the make it stop myth, which means that you kind of get out in the middle of something, your dog is in the middle of lunging, barking at you know, some dog that you have met, and you're thinking, well, how am I going to make this stop? Well, too little preparation. You didn't prepare the dog for that exposure, and too late. You're already, you know, ready to go to the waterfall. You've already fallen over the waterfall. And if a dog is over threshold, he can't process new information. So one of the things that I always work on with people, one of the first things we do is we talk about upstream planning. So if you take your dog out for a walk in the neighborhood every day, and every single day you pass the same house where the dogs are in the yard lunging and barking at the fence, and your dog goes ballistic, and your dog starts to get excited sooner and sooner and sooner because he's anticipating getting to that house. Maybe those dogs know you're coming, they start barking sooner, and it just keeps escalating. You're headed to go right over the waterfall. You know, you need to prepare in advance. To get into the middle of a situation and then think about how you're going to make it stop is too late. Upstream thinking will take care of that. So let's look at number 2, which is about emotional well-being. When a dog is feeling emotionally calm and relaxed, he trusts that everything in his environment is working for his best interests. He has emotional stability. He's not going to extremes of emotion, either extremely excited or extremely withdrawn. And he's overall calm. If he alerts to something new, if he notices something and he alerts to it and he gets interested and excited in it, it's just a normal level of excitement. It's not fear, anxiety, and distress. So there are 4 things. And in this case, I have 4 listed. There's a 5th one, which we'll get to later. And this is my list of, I call it the A stack. It's a series of steps, and each step starts with the letter A. So it's just a convenient way to remember it. So when a dog is feeling distressed, you have to start with the dog being already under threshold. If you wait until you're already in the middle of the high stress experience, there isn't anything you can do except get out of it as best you can. But if you start preparing and you work with the dog before you get into that experience, and you notice that the dog sees something and starts to feel some nervousness about it. Maybe he sees something out the window and it's a long distance away. So he kind of perks up a little bit and looks at it. What's going on? What is that? And you would say to him, oh, I see that you're noticing that. So you acknowledge the dog's feeling. And then you appreciate it, or in other words, you validate it. I see that you're noticing that, and I see it's making you a little bit nervous, isn't it? So you're validating it. You're not telling the dog how to feel. You're just acknowledging that you see how he feels. And then you accept the fact that the dog feels that way. Because remember what I said earlier, you have to work with the dog in front of you right now. Not the one that you want a month or a year from now, but the dog that's right there now. I see that you're upset by that. I get it. And then you ask the dog what he wants to do. And number 4, it takes a while for the dog to understand that he's being asked for his opinion, what he'd like to do. And sometimes you have to help them by showing them what to do. Would you like to come with me over here? Would you like to go and play with your toy? Would you like to get a cookie? You're not telling the dog what he has to do. You're giving him some choices. What would you like to do? If he says he wants to go back to the window and start barking at that person that's walking past your house, then you have to acknowledge that, because he said that's what he wants to do. So you go back to the first step again and you acknowledge it. I see that that's really making you nervous, and I know it is. I understand. And if you're speaking to the dog in a calm voice, that calmness is going to be very attractive to the dog. He's going to gravitate toward the calmness in your voice. Maybe not right away, but if he learns to count on you to be calm, you're going to be his soft place to fall. And he's going to start trusting you. So this is a more defined example of the A-stack method. And you acknowledge the dog's feeling. You appreciate the emotional truth of what the dog is feeling. You validate it. I see that you are afraid. You're not telling the dog, oh, don't be afraid. It's nothing. It's okay. It's okay. Well, the dog doesn't believe it's okay. He still feels scared. So there's no point in telling him it's okay. You want to tell him that you see what he feels and you accept that that's how he's feeling. You ask him what he wants to do. And when the dog knows that he has a choice, he's going to choose. I have a little noisy pup in the background. Don't worry, she's okay. She just wants a little bit of my time, which I can't give her right now. Anyway, so when the dog understands that he has an option, that he can choose what he wants to do, that is giving the dog agency, which is a foundation for building emotional well-being. By agency, I mean that the dog understands that he has control over the things in his environment that are impacting his well-being. He has control over what he can do right now in this moment. He can come with you and get a cookie. He can go play with a toy. He can sit with you on the couch. He can go lie down on his bed. He can do like a whole bunch of different things. So you offer him options and make sure that whatever you offer, the dog is allowed to do. Don't offer don't offer something that you can't give. Okay. So number 3, learning is stressful. Okay, we know that. And mental exercise is demanding. So back to that time you were studying for yeah. Back to that time you were studying for a test. Didn't you feel like you needed a break after a while? Like enough, like my brain is worn out. I need a break. So mental exercise creates pressure and adds stress. So if you want a dog to seek calmness, to seek relaxation, give him a little mental exercise. And a lot of my program consists of giving the dogs mental exercise and asking them, giving them opportunities to do things that are natural and normal for them, and things that they really enjoy doing, so they feel like they can just take a breath and relax. So an emotionally distressed dog isn't capable of bringing full attention to a new task. So you can't expect a dog that is already stressed to learn something new. He's busy focusing on the thing that is mentally taking up his mental energy at that moment. And if it's learning something new, then he's going to focus on that. If it's anxiety about something and that's what he's focused on, then he can't learn anything new. So when a dog is in fight, flight, or freeze, it shuts down the thinking and problem-solving part of his brain. Okay, this is from Linda Michaels' book. It's called Do No Harm. And she talks about the hierarchy of dog needs. And I wish this thing up here would go away. Dogs must be happy in order to learn, pay attention, and problem solve. So let's look at the bottom section, the green section. If you're here, then you've taken care of this green part. You've taken care of your dog's biological needs. You make sure that he has good food, good exercise, he gets good care and grooming and medical care and a soft place to sleep and so on. You've got all that covered. And the thing that so many of us do, and not at no fault of anybody here, it's because this is what we've been taught to do, is we jump from biological needs, we skip emotional and social, we go right up here to training. And in the training section, you'll see listed all of these different training methods, and all of these are positive reinforcement methods, and you'll see counter conditioning and desensitization here. And these are all legitimate training tools that are used in force-free positive reinforcement training up in this red section. But if we go here without making sure that we've got emotional needs and social needs covered, then desensitization, counter conditioning, positive reinforcement, management, all of these things, and these are all training techniques. All of these things could be unproductive. They could actually do more harm than good, because you're asking the dog to perform tasks that he can't process because he's emotionally or socially unprepared. So for emotional needs over here, we have security, love, trust, consistency, and benevolent leadership. For social needs, we have bonding with people and dogs, and play. And so play actually comes before training. Sometimes we use play as take a break from training. We do the training first and then we play. But it really should be the other way around. And some of these quotes are really awesome. Dogs like us need to feel safe, at peace, and love. They depend on us to fill these needs, and we are obligated to do so. And then up here, there is never a justification. I can move this a little bit. There is never a justification to use pain, fear, dominance devices, or training methods with their dogs. And down here, shock, prong, and choke collars. When you use any of those devices, and remember I said back at the beginning that you're not going to learn how to use any kind of fancy devices, and I would put a flexi leash in this category, because flexi leashes or retractable leashes send confusing messages to dogs. You think you're sending one message, that's your intention. The dog is getting a different message. So it's just creating a communication gap. These other techniques that inflict pain, and shock collar, even if it just vibrates, or even if it just makes a beep, beep sound, if you have a dog that's already experiencing anxiety and you suddenly startle him with something that's vibrating against his body, or a beeping noise, dogs have sensitive hearing, or worse yet, an electric shock, or if you use a pinch collar to yank at him, you are adding startle to a dog that's already on the edge. Also, with a prong collar, what you'll often hear people say is if you're using it correctly, that you don't have to use it. But the reason you don't have to use it is that the dog is in an avoidance mode. And avoidance is part of stress. You know, back in the old days when we trained dogs with punishment and physical abuse, we wanted the dogs to avoid doing the wrong things. But those days are long gone, thank goodness. And we don't want to use anything that's going to add to the dog's stress if our objective is to create an emotionally calm, self-regulated, stable emotional environment. Okay. Moving along. Okay, so here's another question for you. Again, I want to move this little thing, get out of my way. Okay. A question for you. What feelings do dogs express when they bark? So there are so many. We could go through the body language of the dog on the left with his open mouth, with the corners of his mouth forward. His ears look like they're flattened or back. You can almost see sort of a frown in his forehead, although the picture doesn't give it, you know, it isn't that clear, but we can kind of surmise those things, and we can't see the rest of his body. But just from the little bit that we can see, this dog is fearful and stressed. Whoops. Somebody's not muted. So I meant to unmute all you. So just mute yourself if you're not, and I'll go back and mute everybody in a minute. And then over here, what are the dog's expectations when out for a walk on a leash? And are the person's expectations different? And that is one of the first questions we have to ask when we're doing leash walking with dogs. We do in my programs, we do all kinds of different leash walkings. We don't just expect a dog to walk beside us. We don't worry too much about the old style heeling because I don't prepare people for competition. So we don't worry too much about that. We just want dogs that are calm and enjoy participating in an outing with you. That's what we're looking for. So we need to ask those questions, don't we? Okay. All right, dogs have an emotional cup. I really wish I could get rid of this thing here. Don't know how to do it. Okay. Um, you need to think about how to refill your dog's emotional cup. And those of you who are registered, when you get the replay, I'm going to send you a link where you can get this graphic for yourself, because it's a really important graphic, and you're never going to get everything on here by just looking at it one time. It's something that I think everybody should have and be able to refer to. So I'm going to give you this. But for now, let's just have a look. Every dog has a cup that needs to be filled with social connection, security, access to reinforcers, and enrichment. And some dogs just seem to be happy all the time. They act like their cup is filled, or they know how to ask for a refill. One of the things that we teach our dogs when we work towards emotional stability is we teach them how to ask for an emotional refill. If their emotional cup is feeling empty, they need to know how to ask for help. Most things that dogs do are completely normal, including the annoying stuff like digging, chasing, barking, all of that. So let's look at the things. Well, let's look at what empties a dog's cup first. There are some things here that are important to look at. Denying access to reinforcers and social isolation. Remember how we used to be told if a dog doesn't listen, you just leave him alone, or you turn your back, or you walk out of the room, or you give him a long time out and ignore him. We have to ask, what was that supposed to teach the dog? So what it does is it really empties the dog's emotional cup. Scary or unpredictable reactions from important humans, and I would also say reactions from the environment, and that goes back to what I mentioned a minute ago about devices that inflict pain. Setting the dog up to fail and then punishing him for it. That's the old negative reinforcement style of training. And then no one responding when the dog is expressing a need. So the flip side of teaching a dog how to ask for what they need is teaching people how to respond to their dog's needs. And it means that you need to understand what dogs are saying when they're communicating with you so that you can respond. And the things that fill the dog's cup, doing things that they love to do. And we arrange environments so that dogs have opportunities to do all this cool stuff so that it doesn't interfere with us and it makes the dog happy. And because they have the opportunity to express their normal needs as a dog, it makes them feel calm and relaxed. You know, think of something that you love to do, something you're passionate about. What do you absolutely love to do? How do you feel after you've been doing that thing, whether it's a sport or an activity or, you know, anything that you really enjoy? You just feel relaxed. This is why we give dogs this kind of opportunity in a managed and controlled environment. The dog doesn't know we managed it. He just knows he's having fun. Freedom to move is really, really important. And we empty a dog's cup when a dog is afraid of something. We tell him to sit and stay. Makes it worse, doesn't it? The dog needs to move. Freedom to make choices goes to agency, and the ability to control outcomes and get reinforces. Again, that's agency. Okay. And getting to do things that a dog loves to do. So this is an awesome graphic, and I'm going to give it to you. And so I hope you'll have occasion to go back and look at it frequently. So what that leads us to is the goal of working with a dog that is experiencing reactivity is that the dog will come closer to experiencing what we call emotional intelligence. And you know what you probably know what emotional intelligence means when we use it to describe a human. It means a person who is just stable and well balanced and can handle, goes with the flow, can handle stress without losing it, that kind of thing. I'll get to more specific details in a minute. But when we talk about emotional intelligence for dogs, we mean the dog's inner emotional state of happiness. And in order to accomplish that, the dog needs benevolent leadership, because dogs have evolved to live in our social environment. And we need to respect the fact that it's not their native environment. They have adapted to it. So they need our help. And again, back to play. Play connects dogs to the freedom to express their nature and to move and to do normal doggy stuff. So let's look at emotional intelligence in more detail. An emotionally intelligent, whether it's a human or a dog, can communicate without conflict. They can ask to have their needs met without becoming angry or impatient or resentful or self-centered. They can communicate calmly and effectively. They're socially comfortable. They recognize friends. They know how to interact with other animals, with other dogs, and with people. And they do so in a socially acceptable way. And they can interact with strangers as well. They can self-regulate their emotions. You don't need to tell the dog, calm down, stop barking. What we want is a dog that can look at a potentially overstimulating experience and understand that he has options. He knows how to stop and consider how he's going to respond. And you might be thinking, how on earth can you teach a dog to do that? And the only reason it seems like a strange thing to teach a dog to do is that it's never been part of our training protocol. But it is, not only is it doable, but it's the natural state of dogs. So all we're doing is helping dogs to return to their normal state. We're restoring what they had in the beginning before we made them all upset. So they can self-regulate their emotions. And play helps them to freely express their natural behaviors. There's a lot of movement, there's a lot of engagement, there's a lot of interactions. Dogs can entertain themselves and they can engage with others in play. And finally, emotional intelligence is pretty synonymous with happiness, because an emotionally intelligent individual knows how to manage stress. So that's the goal. And it's something that you can start working toward with your dog by, first of all, stopping and thinking yourself, what's one thing that I can do to help my dog become less stressed? Could you, for example, make sure that the dog is under threshold and notice when he becomes aware of a potentially overstimulating circumstance that is far enough away from him at that moment so that he's not over threshold about it. And then you can tell him, I see that you're a little upset about that. You can acknowledge what he's feeling instead of waiting until he goes over the top and then wondering how you can stop it. Okay, you can't stop a waterfall, but you can decide not to go over the waterfall if you have 2 oars on your boat and you row in the opposite direction. So you can ask your dog what he needs. What would you like to do now? And then take him to do something else. That's only one small piece of the program, but it's a tiny piece that almost anybody can do. Wouldn't you agree? Almost anybody can do that. It's not complicated. It's not difficult, but it also involves a mindset change. on the part of the human, and a little bit of self-regulation of your own emotions so that you don't immediately start to react with stress and impatience when your dog begins to show that he's going to react to something. Because your stress and impatience and anxiety feeds into the dogs as well. And it makes the dogs worse. We know that, right? Okay. So the path to self-regulation, just to show you in just briefly, a reactive dog, when he sees an event, he instantly, there's no stopping and thinking what I'm going to do. He sees it, he reacts. He sees the other dog, immediately he's pulling on the leash and barking. And it's in full-blown situation before you even have a chance to react. It happens that fast. It's instant. So to bring him to the next step, we need to start what I mentioned a minute ago, start where before the dog is already over threshold. Usually that means at a distance away from whatever that stimulating event is, far enough away so the dog is aware of it, but not overreacting yet. And then you tell him, I see that, let's go do something else. And you're going to row your boat in the other direction, so that the dog feels I'm getting farther and farther away from that thing. So I'm starting to feel safer and safer the farther I get away from that. You want the dog to experience that sense of safety, but he's not going to do that for himself because he doesn't have the emotional regulation yet to do it. You have to help. The third step is that the event will now precipitate a choice. And the dog understands that he now has a choice to engage or disengage. I see that thing out there, I can engage with it, bark, 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 which is going to make me feel stressed and unhappy and upset. Or I can disengage and do what my benevolent leader has shown me how to do, and I can walk away from it and I feel better. I feel good. It doesn't feel as upsetting. So the dog is well on the way to the final step, which is self-regulation. And the dog understands that he has control over the things in his environment that impact his well-being. So, and to help people with this, I have a program. It's called the Emotionally Intelligent Dog Academy. It has limited enrollment. It's not open quite at the moment, but I want to tell you what it is, and you can decide for yourself if it's something that you want to pursue, because it might just be the thing that exactly the thing that you're looking for. So the path to emotional intelligence. Here are the steps that we go through. I'm not going to go through these in great detail because I don't want to go too much over the top of the hour. I want to give you a chance to ask questions, and we're almost done here. But I want to explain what this is about. The first thing we do is practice a foundation of relaxation techniques, so that we bring dogs the feeling of relief. And if you've ever felt sick and then you felt better, remember what that felt like? Oh, it felt like such a relief, right? So we want to give the dogs relief. So that's the first thing we do. We want them to experience what that feels like. And the dogs learn reliable ways to express needs, wants, and feelings. We already talked about that. We talked about two-way communication through leadership. We have to learn how to communicate and how to learn the subtleties of how dogs communicate with you and with each other. We want dogs to be confident in the way they engage, so that it's consent-based. In other words, we are not forcing, we are not limiting their abilities. It's based on consent. The dogs learn to use the system that we teach them. They learn how to use it and that it will always work. So on our end, it's our obligation to make sure that we are really consistent. And that's part of what you have to really be very aware of. In overstimulating circumstances, dogs know that they have more than one option to respond. We talked about that already. And finally, the habit of self-regulation replaces reactivity. So I don't want to take the time to go over this, but inside that blue circle, you have the dog inside his comfort zone with impulsive, insecure, and inattentive behaviors. We want the dog to get out of their comfort zone, to become self-regulated, confident, and attentive. And that's through, this is the A-stack process, which is kind of the underlying system for all of these processes. And finally, training a dog, the reality of training a dog can look like this. And if you try to do it on your own, it can be really hard, and you can have lots of detours. You can end up going over the waterfall, without an oar. And what I offer is a proven system, expert coaching, and accountability to keep you on track. If this is something that you want to discuss with me further, you can take this next step, which is to simply set up a call, totally free. There's no obligation. There's no sales pitch. That's important for you to understand. This isn't to get you on the call to pitch you a sales pitch, because the enrollment in this program is very limited. You may or may not, it may or may not be the thing for you. But if what we will do on this clarity call is we'll take a look at now where you are right now. We'll try to I'll help you to develop a vision of where you want to be. What is your goal? What do you want to accomplish with your dog? And we'll understand the steps you need to take in order to reach your destination. I won't be able to give you all of the steps. It won't be able to, in 30 minutes, I can't get you completely over that gap to reach your destination, but I can give you an understanding of what needs to be done, and I can give you something that you can get started, like I did a minute ago, something that you can get started on right now. It's not the complete picture. It's certainly not a magic wand or a shortcut, but it's something, and it's better than doing nothing, and it's better than doing something that's going to take you in the wrong direction. So a 30-minute call, and it's only for 4 days this week, Monday through Thursday. Last time I did this, I did 3 days, and I had to add a day because the spots got booked up. So I added an extra day. If you want to go in and start booking your spots, this is the link. I'm going to pop it in the chat as soon as I stop the share and look at your questions. And you can click on this and you can set up the call. Again, there's no pressure. If I believe, after we have a conversation, if I believe that my program will help you, I will tell you that. And of course, it's your decision how you want to proceed with that information. But I will offer you an opportunity, and then it's up to you. It's your decision. So let me stop the share. I can see all you lovely people. Thank you so much for being so patient. And I am going to, let me see if I can get the chat back up here. I know that there's a bunch of stuff in the chat. I am going to get started. Okay. The link that I put in the chat is the link to the appointment page. So you can either copy that. You'll also get that in an email that I'll send out to you. So, either way. So let me go back and see if I can start with these questions. And again, if I totally understand, guys, if you need to pop off and leave, thank you so much for attending. I hope you'll stay for the Q&A. I'm going to answer every question that's here, no matter how long it takes. So, feel free. I understand that some of you might have other obligations, but anyway, here we go. I think we may have started. Okay, these are the questions about, about that picture. And we already talked about that. Yes, yeah, Katerina, have to agree. Many still use and promote abusive methods of training. Yes, I know. And one of the reasons I do these classes and one of the reasons I do them for free is that I want to get the message to as many people as possible. And a lot of you have influence over other people with dogs. Some of you I know have training businesses where you have the ability to influence other people and maybe even other trainers. Or if you're not a trainer and you work with a trainer, you also have the ability to speak to them and say, you know, why are you doing this? You know, wouldn't it be better to ask the, you know, to worry more about how the dog is feeling and why, you know, I don't want to make my dog, you know, experience pain and so forth. So it's, these messages are just so important. And can do, you all can spread these like ripples, spread these out. The better off the dogs are and the better off we are too. Okay, so Mary says, every time my dog goes into the garden, he barks at birds or neighbors' dogs. How can we stop it before it happens when he has to go outside? Okay, so Mary, again, it's that same question, how can you stop it before it happens, which is the right question to ask. So it's a process of going back to where the dog is under threshold, working with him there. It's really a detailed step-by-step process, and this is probably not the place to go over every little step, but the one thing I can say to you is, number one, if you can go out into the garden with him, and when he is already barking, if you can somehow bring him away from it, again, that's not the solution. That's not training. That's not going to help him not bark the next time. It's just going to kind of minimize the situation. The other thing is he barks at birds. Well, there's not too much you can do about the birds, but what you can do is what I do in the program is I teach dogs relaxation technique. I teach people how to teach their dogs relaxation techniques. There's a few of them that we use. And so if you teach those relaxation techniques, when the dog is not stressed, like in the house, at home, relaxed, and then you take him out and ask him to relax in the garden. Unfortunately, you can't do too much about what the birds do, but if you can sort of keep him a little farther from where the birds are, I don't even know if that's realistic. But you gradually show him that when he sees these things, he can relax. And I have to say, barking at birds is probably more of a normal thing, but I can understand how it could be a problem. I get that. So hopefully that helped. And I know I can't give you, you know, a lot of these questions, I can't give you very thorough answers, but I can help hopefully a little bit. Renate, how about dogs, often young teenage males, who get a sort of kick from mobbing? You mean like just I'm not sure what you mean by mobbing. If you're still here, you can unmute and tell me what you mean by mobbing. But I think it's like, you know, ganging up on dogs, maybe. I'm not sure what that means, but if it does mean ganging up, when dogs get together, it's like a group of young boys. When they get together, sometimes there's that crowd mentality that creeps in. So removing the dog from the crowd might be it. Okay, let's see. Gret says, my dog is afraid of the dark outside, but will go out to pee, barking the whole time. Aw. Then comes in with me on leash. Off leash in our fenced yard, she would just keep barking and not come in. She feels better being attached to me. Yes, and I would say continue keeping her on leash. And maybe you can, this is where some of those relaxation techniques might come in handy. And I would say that when she's barking on leash, Gret, just tell her, go through that acknowledgement and appreciation and acceptance, those steps. Just say to her, oh, I see that you're upset, you're afraid of the dark. Okay, I understand. I know, I understand you're afraid of the dark. Just go through that whole thing with her. You might be surprised. People tell me that it really makes a difference, because a lot of times, what we tend to do when we do it with the best of intentions, because we believe it's the right thing to do, is we tell the dog not to be scared. Like, it's only the dark, don't worry, there's no monsters out there, don't be scared. But the dog says, but I am scared. So if you say, yes, I understand you're scared, that kind of that's a change in your energy, and it does make a difference with the dog. So go ahead and give that a shot. I think that'll help. Yes, thank you, Diane. Yes, I love to do it. I guess Diane had to leave us. I totally understand if that's something you have to do. I'm not going to feel bad. Okay, good evening from the UK. I know it's getting late for you guys in Europe. Also, what about when he barks at us because he has finished his meal and we are still eating and he wants our food? But how do we stop him barking and whining us when our eating? Now, I have to ask, when he starts doing that, what is he getting out of it? And you might say, well, he's not getting anything out of it because we're not giving him his food, our food. So hopefully you're not giving him his food. But you're probably telling him to stop. So he's getting that attention from you. So what I would say is, after he's had his meal, take him and bring him somewhere where he's not, in the same room while you're eating, and give him something really, really interesting to do. Like maybe gnawing on a favorite chew bone, or stuff a Kong with part of his meal. So you only give him like a portion of his meal in his bowl, and then put the rest of it in a stuffed toy and send him into a different room so that he can do that. And then if he bothers you, just, let him discover that he has a toy, and he can have more fun with the toy than by whining. All right, that would be my just like Band-Aid approach to it. We would do lots of other relaxation techniques in the process for that. I don't know why he's whining while you eat. We just have to assume that he wants your attention. But why he wants your attention at that point is a question that we have to explore. And Mary, if you care to talk about that, go ahead and set up a call. We'll discuss it and see. There could be lots of things going on there. Okay, Gret, thank you. Thank you all so much. CBD, medicine help with anxiety. That is not I don't like to answer questions about supplements. Those are things that you might want to ask from someone who has expertise in that area. I know that people have used CBD medicine for that kind of thing. But I just don't want to give an opinion on it because it's not something I feel I have expertise in. So I don't want to mislead you. Okay. Oh, Beverly, a little unsolicited promotion. Yes, Beverly and I have been working together with Noel. And Beverly, thank you so much for saying that. The methods work. Yes, they work. You know why they work? Because we're going to what makes a dog a dog. We're not trying to superimpose anything phony or fake or artificial on what a dog is doing. We're looking at what makes the dog a dog, and how can we make that dog express more of what is naturally himself. And who doesn't want to do that? Don't you feel better when you're with people who let you just be yourself, rather than having to put on some kind of an artificial, phony persona that's just not you, doesn't feel natural? So we don't want to do that to our dogs. We want them to feel natural. So thank you for that, Beverly. I so appreciate it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to copy that and use it. Okay. And Katerina, for the dog being afraid of the dark. Okay, good. Would it help to take a flashlight out with you? Maybe you're already doing that. My dogs are not worried of the dark, but when we walk in the dark, I got a headlight on and they walk in front of me in the lit area and can see. Okay, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. And Greg, if you're still listening, that's a great idea. A flashlight. Yeah. Okay. Oh, great. Yes, you do use a flashlight. Okay. And it helps. Sure. Yeah, I would think it would help. What's the best way to keep a dog calm when you're nearing a known destination and they know where you are? The whining can start 10 minutes. Yeah, I know that. That is a super good question. And that's something I would like to explore with you. That's a really good question, Helena. That's really good. And that's pretty common. I have that too. And I can do you one better, because I have had puppies that go for long car rides and do not get car sick until the last 3 or 4 minutes before I pull into my driveway. And then they get car sick. So anyway. All right. So I guess that's it for the questions, guys. Oh, thank you so much, everybody, for attending. Go ahead and set up those calls with me. I love having those conversations with you, and if I can be of help in any way. And again, if I think I can help you on a bigger scale with my program, I will tell you. And I don't do high pressure stuff. So if it's not for you, it's not for you. And that is perfectly fine. I'm just here to help you. And I want you to spread the word, guys. Spread the word. That's your assignment. That's your homework. Okay. So long, folks. And watch your email. You're going to get an email for the replay. Everybody registered will get the replay. So long.